Discover the timeline jump method, an elegant technique for locating the hidden wealth grid and stepping into lasting prosperity. This audiobook teaches you how to shift into your rich timeline by changing who you are being, not by chasing luck. Stay with the method and you'll know how to switch realities and keep the money in your life day by day. The timeline jump method. You didn't arrive here by accident. Certain pages find certain souls. If this book found you, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. I'm giving away a free physical copy of this book, packed with ancient wisdom and timeless insight. The details are in the pinned comment, so don't forget to check it out. Introduction. Within the infinite tapestry of existence lies a profound truth that most overlook. Time is not a linear path, but a multidimensional landscape. Like a vast crystalline structure, it contains countless parallel versions of your life, each vibrating at different frequencies of abundance. This hidden wealth grid exists as surely as the chair you're sitting in right now, and accessing it requires nothing more than understanding its fundamental nature. Think of your current financial reality as merely one coordinate in an infinite field of possibilities. Just as a radio must be tuned to the correct frequency to receive a clear signal, your consciousness must be calibrated to perceive and merge with these more prosperous timelines. This isn't wishful thinking, it's quantum navigation. The method you're about to learn combines three essential elements. First, through specific imaginal practices, you'll learn to detect and resonate with wealth coordinates that already exist. Second, you'll master behavioral design principles that align your daily actions with these abundant realities. Third, you'll develop ethical stewardship practices that ensure your timeline shifts create positive ripples across the collective field. Timeline. Jumping isn't about magical thinking. It's about precise, energetic adjustment. When you understand that your current financial situation is simply one probability wave among many, you can begin the disciplined practice of shifting your consciousness to more abundant coordinates. But this isn't just about visualization. It's about systematic reality engineering. Your reality is essentially a frequency you're tuned to. By learning to detect and lock onto wealthier coordinates, you begin a process of quantum tunneling into those parallel versions of your life, where prosperity is your natural state. The key lies in maintaining coherence between your imaginal practice, your practical actions, and your ethical framework. This book will teach you the exact protocol for executing these timeline jumps while ensuring the gains are locked in through practical systems. You're not just dreaming of wealth. You're learning to navigate to it with scientific precision. Part 1. Crossing the Threshold. Awakening to the Rich Timeline. Chapter 1. The Map You Were Never Given. On a crisp autumn morning in 1987, Elias Whitcomb cleared out his locker at the Cedar Grove post office for the last time. Among the collected debris of 32 years of service, he discovered a weathered leather-bound notebook, its pages filled with peculiar route annotations made by his predecessor, Thomas McKinnon. At first glance, the notes appeared ordinary: street names, house numbers, delivery instructions. But as Elias studied them more closely, he noticed unusual markings in the margins. Tiny arrows, circles, and cryptic phrases like Wealth Fork and Abundance Crossing. Next to certain intersections, McKinnon had drawn small stars with dates, followed by observations about subtle changes in the neighborhood's prosperity. One annotation particularly caught his eye. Corner of Maple and Pine. Notice how the air feels different on alternate Wednesdays. Two paths overlap here. Choose the one that rings like silver. Intrigued, Elias began paying attention to these marked locations during his final week of deliveries. On his last Wednesday, standing at Maple and Pine, Elias experienced what McKinnon had described. The morning air seemed to shimmer with possibility, and he felt an inexplicable urge to turn left instead of his usual right. Following this impulse, he discovered a previously unnoticed cafe, its windows gleaming with opportunity. Inside, a conversation with a stranger led to an unexpected investment opportunity that would later transform his retirement. Over the following months, Elias began recognizing similar choice points in his daily life, moments when reality seemed to ripple with alternative possibilities. He noticed how certain decisions carried a distinct energetic signature, a subtle warmth in his chest, an unexpected clarity of thought, or a peculiar sense of déjà vu. These weren't mere coincidences, but signals pointing toward more prosperous timelines. Elias started mapping these moments in his own notebook. He recorded when his attention felt magnetically pulled in unexpected directions, when synchronicities clustered around specific choices, and when his imagination suddenly presented vivid alternative scenarios. Through this practice, he discovered that prosperity wasn't about making more money. It was about aligning his identity, attention, and actions with the version of reality where abundance naturally flowed. The universe offers this same mapping system to all who learn to recognize its signals. Each day presents multiple forks in the road, each vibrating with different potentials. The key lies in developing the sensitivity to detect these choice points and the courage to follow their guidance. Practice the daily timeline mapping ritual. Each morning, set aside 5 minutes for timeline mapping. Observe one significant decision point in your day. It might be as simple as choosing which route to take to work or when to make an important phone call. Notice the subtle energetic difference between your options. How does each potential choice feel in your body? Which option carries a sense of expansion or possibility? Record your observations and identify one small action that aligns with the more prosperous timeline. This micro step, however modest, creates an energetic bridge to that reality. Chapter 2. The Secret Geography of Wealth. Miriam Halloway had spent 15 years catching babies in River Heights, a patchwork of neighborhoods where wealth and scarcity danced an intricate waltz. As she traveled between births, she began noticing how prosperity moved through the streets like an invisible river, creating eddies of opportunity in unexpected places. On Sycamore Street, where modest homes nestled against aging apartment blocks, she observed how Mrs. Chen's corner store became a hub of community exchange. Every Tuesday morning, fresh produce appeared in wooden crates outside the shop, drawing neighbors who shared recipes, job leads, and small kindnesses. These gatherings often led to surprising connections: a retired accountant offering free tax advice, a contractor providing discounted repairs, a student teaching computer skills to seniors. Miriam started mapping these nodes of generosity, marking them in her birth journal alongside delivery dates and client notes. She noticed how certain intersections seemed to pulse with possibility, how resources flowed more freely at particular times, how random encounters in these spaces often yielded unexpected opportunities. One rainy Thursday, following what she called a prosperity pulse, Miriam deviated from her usual route home. The air felt charged with potential, reminiscent of the atmosphere just before a birth when everything aligns for new life to emerge. This deviation led her to Lisa's cafe, where she overheard a pregnant woman discussing her fears about hospital birth. The conversation evolved into Miriam's first sliding-scale midwifery contract, allowing her to serve families who couldn't afford traditional care. This client later connected Miriam to a network of holistic practitioners, expanding her practice in ways she never imagined. As Miriam studied these patterns, she recognized that the wealth grid wasn't just metaphorical. It manifested in physical locations where prosperity gathered and multiplied. These nodes acted as amplifiers, transforming small acts of generosity into expanding circles of abundance. She learned to read subtle signs, increased foot traffic at certain hours, clusters of thriving businesses, places where strangers naturally gathered and shared resources. Most importantly, Miriam discovered that accessing these prosperity nodes required internal alignment. When she approached them with awareness and openness, opportunities unfolded naturally. The external patterns reflected her inner readiness to receive and circulate abundance. Practice the 30-minute node scan. Set aside 30 minutes to map the prosperity nodes in your life. Find a quiet space and recall 3 recurring patterns where abundance has naturally flowed toward you. These might be specific locations where opportunities consistently arise, times of day when resources seem more available, or types of interactions that reliably lead to unexpected gifts. Note these patterns in a small notebook or on a physical map you can carry. Mark each node with a symbol that resonates with its unique energy signature. This grid becomes your personal prosperity map, revealing the invisible infrastructure of abundance in your daily life. Chapter 3. Identity. Jonah Pembroke stood before his art class, watching 30 pairs of glazed eyes stare past him. After 12 years of teaching, he knew this expression well, the subtle disconnection that meant his words were falling into the void between teacher and student. But that morning, something shifted. He had been reading about the connection between posture and presence and decided to try an experiment. Instead of his usual stance, shoulders slightly hunched, weight shifted to one leg, he planted his feet firmly, straightened his spine, and lowered his voice half an octave. The change was immediate and startling. "Today we're exploring how light creates form," he said, and watched as heads lifted, eyes focused. The same lesson he'd taught countless times suddenly held his students spellbound. By adjusting his physical presence, he had tuned himself to a different frequency, one that commanded attention without demanding it. Over the next few days, Jonah began noticing how this subtle shift affected other areas of his life. The barista who usually rushed through his order now engaged in conversation. A gallery owner he'd known for years suddenly mentioned an opportunity to showcase local artists. Even his relationship with colleagues transformed. The principal began seeking his input on the school's new arts initiative. Intrigued, Jonah decided to expand the experiment. For 1 week, he consciously embodied what he called his gallery curator self, a version of himself that moved with deliberate grace, spoke with measured authority, and dressed with subtle sophistication. He replaced his worn messenger bag with a leather portfolio, traded his casual language for more precise diction, and began treating every conversation as if it were taking place in an upscale gallery. The results were remarkable. By Friday, 3 different people had approached him about art consulting opportunities. A former student now working at a prestigious design firm reached out about collaboration. The local arts council invited him to join their advisory board. What Jonah discovered was that identity wasn't fixed. It was a frequency, a signal broadcast through countless small choices. By consciously adjusting this signal, he could tune into different timelines of possibility. Each micro-adjustment in his self-presentation created ripples that attracted corresponding opportunities. The practice 7-day identity immersion. Begin by writing a present-tense statement that captures the essence of your desired identity. Make it specific and embodied. I am description of who you're becoming. Each morning, speak this statement aloud while looking in the mirror, fully inhabiting the posture and presence of this identity. Then, choose one public action that aligns with this new self-image and perform it deliberately. This might be as simple as how you greet others, the way you sign your name, or how you arrange your workspace. The key is consistency. Maintain this practice for 7 full days, allowing your new identity frequency to strengthen and stabilize. Chapter 4. Belief as Timeline Currency. Ruth Langley walked her usual rounds through the Cedar Grove Community Clinic, carrying more than just medical supplies in her weathered nurse's bag. Over 15 years of community nursing had taught her that healing often depended as much on belief as it did on medicine. She noticed a pattern among her patients. Those who believed in their recovery, regardless of circumstances, seemed to attract exactly the resources they needed. Mrs. Martinez, despite living on a fixed income, always managed to find rides to her appointments because she firmly believed the universe provides transportation. Meanwhile, Mr. Johnson, with a wider support network, frequently missed visits because he was convinced nothing ever works out. The contrast fascinated Ruth. She began documenting these patterns, treating beliefs like a form of currency that patients either invested wisely or squandered. In her small notebook, she recorded how certain thoughts seemed to multiply resources while others drained them away. One morning, Ruth decided to test this theory herself. She had always believed that nurses are overworked and underpaid. This belief felt true, backed by years of experience, yet she wondered about its hidden costs. Each time she thought it, she noticed herself passing up opportunities for advancement or additional training. She decided to exchange this limiting belief for a new one. My service creates abundant returns. At first, it felt like forcing a counterfeit coin into circulation, but she committed to this new mental currency, repeating it each morning as she prepared for work. Within weeks, subtle shifts emerged. A grateful patient mentioned her supervisor's leadership program. A local healthcare foundation reached out about paid speaking opportunities. She found herself noticing and acting on possibilities she would have previously dismissed as not for someone like me. The most striking change came when she was offered a position to develop a community health initiative, one that came with both higher pay and more flexible hours. In the past, she would have declined, believing she wasn't qualified. Instead, she heard herself saying, "I look forward to contributing my experience." Ruth realized that beliefs functioned like compound interest in the bank of reality. Each mental deposit of "my service creates abundant returns" accumulated evidence, making the next opportunity easier to recognize and accept. Meanwhile, her old belief had been silently deducting potential from her account every day. The practice: belief exchange exercise. On a blank page, write down one limiting belief that has been draining your mental account. Below it, calculate its cost in opportunities missed, relationships strained, or resources rejected. Now, craft a counter-belief that, if true, would open new possibilities. For the next 21 days, repeat this new belief 3 times daily, morning, noon, and night. Treat each repetition as a deposit in your prosperity account, knowing that compound interest begins with a single transaction. Chapter 5. The Law of Equivalent Exchange. Silas Wentworth stood behind the counter of his cafe, the Morning Light, absently wiping the same spot he'd been cleaning for 10 minutes. Business had been steady, but uninspiring, much like the lukewarm coffee sitting in the pot. He noticed how his inner state of resignation seemed to mirror the tepid response from customers. One morning, after reading an old book on merchant wisdom, Silas decided to conduct an experiment. Instead of merely serving coffee, he would pour his full presence and gratitude into each interaction. He began by truly seeing each customer, not as transactions, but as individuals worthy of his best service. As he mindfully prepared each drink, investing his complete attention and craftsmanship, he noticed subtle shifts. Regular customers began lingering longer, ordering more, and bringing friends. A woman who usually grabbed a quick coffee to go sat down one morning and shared how the atmosphere had changed. "There's something different here now," she said. "It feels more intentional." Silas realized he had been operating his business at a spiritual deficit, offering less inwardly than he hoped to receive outwardly. He started keeping what he called an energetic ledger, noting the correlation between his internal investment and external returns. When he approached his work with half-hearted attention, sales remained flat, but on days he poured genuine care and excellence into every cup. Unexpected opportunities arose. One such morning, while crafting a cappuccino with particular attention, a business consultant noticed his care and offered to feature the Morning Light in a series about exceptional local businesses. The size of the opportunity matched precisely the level of presence Silas had been cultivating. As weeks passed, Silas refined his practice of equivalence. He discovered that gratitude, when genuinely felt and expressed, acted as a multiplier for his efforts. His competence, when coupled with full presence, attracted customers who valued quality over price. Every visible action that aligned with his inner state seemed to generate a proportional return. A regular customer who worked in publishing remarked one day, "You know, Silas, getting coffee here isn't just a transaction anymore. It's an experience worth paying for." This comment crystallized his understanding. The grid responded not to what he did, but to the congruence between his inner offering and outer action. The Morning Light had become more than a cafe. It was a living laboratory of energetic exchange. Each day, Silas witnessed how his internal offerings, whether attention, gratitude, or excellence, returned to him in precise measure through external channels. The practice internal offerings ledger. This week, commit to making 3 specific internal offerings. Choose one form of time investment, one expression of focused attention, and one application of your craft or skill. In a small notebook, record these offerings daily and note the corresponding external returns, no matter how subtle. Watch for the precise way the grid honors your energetic deposits through unexpected opportunities, resources, or connections. Chapter 6. The Quiet Mechanics of Attention. Hester Merriweather sat at her desk, surrounded by multiple screens displaying software testing protocols. Notifications pinged incessantly, emails flooded her inbox, and colleagues dropped by with quick questions that fractured her concentration. Each interruption felt like a small tear in the fabric of her focus. One afternoon, while testing a particularly complex system, she noticed how her scattered attention mirrored the bugs she was finding, fragmented, inconsistent, appearing in unexpected places. It reminded her of her grandmother's advice about weaving. A single strong thread, properly placed, holds the entire pattern together. Drawing on this insight, Hester began treating her attention like a master weaver's thread. She started small, creating micro-moments of complete focus. When notifications buzzed, she wouldn't immediately react. Instead, she would finish her current test sequence, maintaining an unbroken line of attention. She discovered that these moments of sustained focus were like stitches in time, creating a more coherent pattern in her work outcomes. During a particularly stressful project deadline, Hester remembered her new practice. While her colleagues rushed frantically, she paused for 30 seconds, visualizing the successful completion of her tasks. She anchored this vision with 3 deep breaths, then took one deliberate action. To her surprise, she uncovered a critical bug that would have caused major issues later, something she might have missed in a scattered state. This experience taught her that attention wasn't just about productivity. It was the very tool that shaped reality's fabric. Like a weaver selecting specific threads, her focused attention seemed to draw forth particular outcomes from the vast field of possibilities. Hester developed what she called her attention anchor, a brief but powerful practice that helped her maintain coherent focus throughout the day. When she felt herself dispersing across too many tasks, she would pause, breathe deeply 3 times, and hold a clear image of successful completion for 30 seconds. This simple ritual became her way of reweaving her attention into a single powerful thread. Over time, she noticed that the quality of her attention directly influenced the quality of her results. Days when she maintained stronger focus yielded cleaner code, better solutions, and more positive interactions with colleagues. It was as if her disciplined attention was literally sculpting a different version of events. The practice, twice daily, perform the attention anchor ritual. Begin with 3 deep breaths to clear your mental space. Then spend 30 seconds holding a single image of prosperity. Make it vivid and feel it as real. Complete the practice by taking one intentional action that aligns with this vision. This ritual acts as a focused thread, weaving your desired timeline into being through consistent, disciplined attention. Chapter 7. The First Jump. Amos Caldwell gripped his steering wheel, staring at the familiar intersection where he always turned left toward the airport route. Today felt different. The morning sun caught his rearview mirror at an unusual angle, casting a brief rainbow across his dashboard. Without fully understanding why, he turned right instead. This small deviation led him past a quiet coffee shop he'd never noticed before. The scent of fresh pastries drifted through his slightly opened window, and he felt an unusual lightness in his chest. Later that day, his passengers seemed more engaging, tips increased, and he encountered surprisingly little traffic. Intrigued by these subtle shifts, Amos began intentionally experimenting with small changes in his daily patterns. He discovered that certain alterations, like choosing a different parking spot or taking an alternate street, created ripple effects that transformed his entire day's flow. The key, he learned, lay in proper preparation. Before making any intentional shift, Amos would take 3 centered breaths, clearly visualize his intended route, and notice the emotional texture of his current moment. He developed a method he called grounding the gain. After each successful shift, he would physically touch something in his environment, anchoring the new pattern into tangible reality. One morning, Amos decided to test his protocol more systematically. He prepared with his usual breathing practice, visualized a specific route he'd never taken, and calibrated his emotional state to match the feeling of discovery. As he drove, he noticed subtle differences. The quality of light seemed clearer, conversations flowed more naturally, and opportunities appeared with unexpected ease. Yet Amos remained practical. When he thought he'd manifested a particularly lucky day, he carefully examined the circumstances. Had the surge in riders been due to a local event he hadn't known about? Was the increased income actually from his route change, or simply seasonal variation? This discernment helped him distinguish between genuine timeline shifts and coincidence. To verify his findings, Amos kept meticulous notes in a small notebook he stored in his glove compartment. He documented his preparation process, the specific changes made, and the observable outcomes. Patterns emerged. Certain types of shifts consistently produced better results when backed by thorough emotional preparation and practical follow-through. Most importantly, Amos learned that successful micro-jumps required both inner and outer alignment. The physical act of choosing a new route had to match an internal readiness for change. Without this harmony, the shifts would feel forced or quickly revert to old patterns. The practice: choose one day each week for your micro-jump sequence. Begin with 3 minutes of slow, rhythmic breathing to center yourself. Next, vividly imagine crossing a threshold into a slightly enhanced version of your regular path. Notice and hold the feeling of positive expectation this creates. Finally, choose one practical action that anchors this shift. Take a different route, adjust your schedule slightly, or modify a habitual response. Document your experience, noting both subtle and obvious changes that follow. Chapter 8. Money that follows alignment. Beatrice Larkin sat at her oak desk each morning precisely at 7, lighting a small candle and setting her intention for the day's editing work. This ritual had begun as a simple way to create structure in her freelance life, but she soon noticed an intriguing pattern emerging. On days when she performed her morning sequence with full presence, arranging her reference books just so, writing her daily rate in her ledger with quiet confidence, speaking her expertise affirmation aloud, new editing requests would often appear in her inbox by afternoon. At first she dismissed these correlations as mere coincidence, but as weeks passed, she couldn't ignore how her income seemed to respond to her inner stance. When she approached her work from a place of rushed desperation, taking on projects that felt misaligned with her expertise just to pay bills, the flow of ideal clients would mysteriously dry up. Yet when she maintained her morning ritual with calm assurance, higher-paying projects that perfectly matched her skills would manifest, often through unexpected referrals. One Tuesday morning, after completing her ritual with particular clarity, Beatrice noticed an unusual warmth in her chest while reviewing a small editing request that had come in, a feeling she'd learned to trust as a signal of alignment. Though the initial project was modest, she responded with her full attention and professionalism. Within days, that client referred her to a publishing house seeking a long-term copy editor for their historical fiction division, her secret passion. The universe, Beatrice discovered, spoke through the language of money. Each payment, decline, or unexpected expense carried a message about energetic alignment. When she received prompt payment from clients, it reflected clear, energetic boundaries in her work. Delayed payments often revealed where she needed to adjust her own patterns of procrastination or people-pleasing. She developed simple practices to maintain this dialogue with prosperity. Before quoting rates, she would pause to feel if the number resonated with her worth. She created a gratitude ritual for each payment received, taking a moment to appreciate the exchange of value. Most importantly, she learned to treat money as feedback rather than judgment, each financial situation offering insights about her alignment with prosperity consciousness. Through this approach, Beatrice found herself becoming more attuned to subtle financial messages. A canceled contract might signal the need to raise her rates. An unexpected bonus could confirm she was undervaluing certain services. By responding to these cues with thoughtful adjustments rather than emotional reactions, she established a more harmonious relationship with money's natural flow. The practice. Each week, conduct a signal audit of your financial landscape. Record 3 distinct money messages you've received. Perhaps a surprising expense, an unexpected payment, or a stalled agreement. For each signal, notice the inner stance or belief it might be reflecting. Choose one aligned action in response, such as adjusting a rate, establishing a new boundary, or upgrading a service offering. Document both the signal and your response, watching how the flow shifts as you engage this dialogue. Chapter 9. Clearing the Gates. Elias Thayer stood before the factory's time clock, watching workers shuffle past as they had for 15 years. His grandfather had worked these same lines, as had his father. 3 generations of Thayers, all wearing the same Navy uniform, all punching the same clock. The promotion notice hung beside it, seeming to mock his hesitation. Though qualified, something deeper than doubt held him back. During his lunch break, alone in the break room, Elias pulled out an old photo from his wallet. His father in the same uniform, same proud stance. The image carried weight beyond paper, an unspoken expectation that had shaped his choices. A Thayer keeps his feet on solid ground, his father always said, a warning against reaching too high. That evening, sorting production reports, Elias noticed his hands trembling when signing his name on a supervisor recommendation form. The resistance wasn't logical. He had the experience, the skills, the respect of his crew. Yet each time opportunity knocked, an invisible chain seemed to yank him back to his assigned place. In the quiet of his home office, Elias began writing down the unseen barriers. Words flowed about family loyalty, about staying humble, about not betraying his roots. He recognized these thoughts as inherited stories, passed down like old tools that no longer served their purpose. The shame of wanting more, the duty to remain unchanged, the silent vow to honor his father's path, all formed a web of resistance anchoring him to scarcity. One evening, as moonlight filtered through his window, Elias performed a simple yet powerful ritual. He wrote each limiting belief on separate pieces of paper. I must stay small to be loyal. Wanting more is selfish. This is all I deserve. With each one he spoke aloud. I release this story. It served its time. I choose my own path now. He took these papers to his backyard fire pit. As each one burned, he inhaled deeply, then exhaled with purpose, feeling the old patterns dissolve with the smoke. The final paper held his father's often repeated warning about solid ground. Before burning it, Elias added, "Thank you for protecting me. I'm ready to fly now." The next day, something shifted in his walk through the factory floor. His shoulders felt lighter, his steps more certain. When he signed the promotion application, his hand moved with clear purpose. The resistance hadn't vanished entirely, but its grip had loosened, allowing space for new possibilities to emerge. The practice. On each new moon, create a gate-clearing ceremony. First, journal about one inherited limitation holding you back. Write its origin story, its cost, and its outdated purpose. Then, speak aloud a formal renunciation. I release this pattern with gratitude for its lessons. Finally, perform a symbolic act of release. Burn the written limitation, bury a representing object, or cut a string that represents the old bond. Document any shifts in opportunity or ease that follow. Chapter 10. Rituals of Invitation. The evening light cast long shadows across Miriam Hawthorne's small garden as she completed her final client consultation of the day. For years, she had worked alone, transforming neglected patches of earth into thriving sanctuaries. Yet something in her spirit yearned for meaningful collaboration, for projects that could grow beyond her solitary efforts. One evening, while tending to her own modest herb garden, Miriam noticed how the plants seemed to respond to her quietest moments. In the gentle transition between day and night, when the world softened its edges, she began developing a simple practice. She would sit among her herbs, close her eyes, and whisper ancient words of gratitude. I am open to receive. I am ready to grow. Each night, Miriam created small offerings, a freshly cut flower placed on her windowsill, a handful of seeds scattered for birds, or spring water poured at the base of her oldest rose bush. These weren't grand gestures, but consistent acts that acknowledged the reciprocal nature of abundance. She developed a rhythm, as natural as the sunset itself. First, she would list 3 moments of gratitude from her day. Perhaps the way morning light caught dewdrops on leaves, a client's smile of appreciation, or the unexpected resilience of a struggling plant. Then she would close her eyes and spend 2 minutes visualizing her garden design business flourishing through meaningful partnerships. Finally, before sleep, she would perform one small act of generosity, preparing plant cuttings for a neighbor or writing a note of encouragement to a fellow gardener. One evening, as Miriam completed her ritual, she received an email from Elena Martinez, an established landscape architect who had noticed Miriam's unique approach to urban gardening. Elena proposed a collaboration that would combine Miriam's intimate knowledge of plants with her own architectural expertise. The partnership didn't materialize immediately. Weeks passed as they exchanged ideas and explored possibilities. Miriam continued her evening practice, understanding that true abundance arrives not through force but through patient invitation. Her nightly rituals created a field of receptivity, allowing opportunities to emerge organically. When the collaboration finally took form, it felt as natural as a seed sprouting in well-prepared soil. Together they began creating sustainable garden spaces that neither could have manifested alone. The partnership emerged not from desperate seeking, but from consistent, gentle invitation. The practice. Each night engage in a 3-part invitation ritual. First, write down 3 specific moments of gratitude from your day. Then, spend exactly 2 minutes visualizing prosperity flowing naturally into your life. Conclude by performing one small act of generosity, something that can be completed before sleep. Maintain this practice with steady devotion, understanding that you are signaling your readiness to the hidden wealth grid through these subtle but powerful acts. Part 2. Walking the grid, deepening practice and securing gains. Chapter 11. Timeline Hygiene. Walter Hargrove moved quietly through his vineyard at dawn, observing how the previous day's careful pruning had already strengthened the remaining vines. After 15 years of winemaking, he understood that maintaining gains mattered more than rapid growth. His recent success, a prestigious regional award for his Cabernet, taught him an unexpected lesson about the nature of prosperity. In the months following the award, Walter noticed his initial elation giving way to subtle anxiety. Orders increased, yet he caught himself falling into old patterns of doubt. Some mornings he would wake feeling like an imposter, as though his achievement might dissolve like morning mist. The turning point came when he recognized that his most successful vintages resulted not from sporadic bursts of attention, but from consistent, daily tending. Each morning he began implementing what he called his 3 stakes, small but crucial actions that anchored his new reality. First, he would walk the vineyard's perimeter, physically affirming his stewardship. Then, he recorded the previous day's sales and climate conditions, creating a tangible record of progress. Finally, he spent 10 minutes in his wine cellar, connecting with the quiet certainty of his craft. These weren't mere habits, but stabilization points, much like the stakes supporting his young vines. When doubt crept in, these anchors held firm, preventing him from sliding back into smaller versions of himself. One morning, while securing new growth on his Merlot vines, Walter understood the parallel between vine maintenance and preserving prosperity. Just as a vine needed proper support to bear fruit, his expanded success required consistent structural support. He established clear financial protocols, separating business and personal accounts, and created systematic ways to track and reinvest profits. The most crucial insight came while training a particularly vigorous vine. Left unchecked, it would grow wild, possibly damaging itself. Similarly, sudden success without proper support could lead to instability. Walter developed emotional checkpoints throughout his day, brief moments to assess his inner state and adjust his approach. He learned to recognize signs of overreach or undervaluation, making small corrections before they could threaten his progress. As spring turned to summer, Walter observed how his stabilized systems created a natural rhythm. Each small act of maintenance, whether in the vineyard or in his business practices, reinforced the reality of his success. His wines improved not through revolutionary changes, but through steady, attentive care. The practice: conduct a weekly anchor review. List 3 specific actions that stabilize your current prosperity level. These might include financial protocols, emotional check-ins, or practical routines. Choose one maintenance task from this list and commit to performing it consistently for the next 7 days. Record how this regular tending prevents backsliding and strengthens your new reality. Chapter 12. Emotional Steering for Rich Results. Agnes Hartford stood at the nurse's station, her hand hovering over a patient chart as waves of frustration coursed through her body. The emergency department hummed with its usual chaos: overhead pages, beeping monitors, and the constant flow of human need. But today felt different. Instead of letting the intensity overwhelm her, Agnes paused, remembering what she'd learned about emotional navigation. She noticed how her shoulders had tensed, how her breathing had shortened. These weren't just symptoms of stress, they were data points on her internal compass. Taking 3 deliberate breaths, Agnes allowed herself to fully experience the frustration without trying to change it. Like checking the direction of wind before adjusting a sail, she read the message beneath the emotion. The frustration spoke of misaligned expectations, of trying to force solutions rather than flowing with what was possible. As she recognized this, her perspective shifted. The chaotic emergency room transformed from a source of stress into a field of opportunities for micro-adjustments. Agnes remembered the day this understanding first clicked. During a particularly challenging shift, a critical patient's vital signs had begun to deteriorate. Instead of succumbing to panic, she had paused to notice the fear rising in her chest. That moment of awareness created space to think clearly, to act precisely, to find solutions that might have been missed in the rush of reactive emotion. She developed a system of emotional checkpoints throughout her shifts. When anxiety arose, she would pause for 3 breaths, allowing the feeling to become information rather than interference. Pride became a signal to check for overlooked details. Irritation with colleagues transformed into an indicator to adjust her communication style. One morning, while handling multiple urgent cases, Agnes felt the familiar surge of overwhelm. Rather than pushing through, she stepped aside for 30 seconds, placed her hand on her heart, and allowed the feeling to speak. The overwhelm wasn't telling her to work faster. It was guiding her to reorganize her approach. She delegated 2 tasks, reprioritized her patient rounds, and found a smoother workflow emerged naturally. This wasn't just stress management, it was emotional navigation. Each feeling became a subtle nudge of the helm, guiding her toward more effective choices. She noticed that cultivating certain emotional states, steady calm, open expectancy, quiet gratitude, created better outcomes than trying to force solutions through sheer will. Over time, Agnes developed what she called her emotional palette, a range of supportive feelings she could access quickly through breath and attention. Like colors on an artist's palette, these emotions could be combined and applied skillfully to different situations. A blend of calm certainty helped with difficult patients. Quiet expectancy paired with focused attention improved her diagnostic accuracy. The practice: begin a daily emotional log. Twice each day, name the dominant feeling present. Follow with a 3-breath reset. Inhale deeply while acknowledging the emotion. Hold briefly, then exhale while allowing it to inform your next step. Note one aligned action that emerges from this awareness. Chapter 13: The Mirror of Micro-Choices. Theodore Ashby sat at his desk, surrounded by delivery route maps that covered every neighborhood in the city. For 15 years, he had planned the most efficient paths for drivers, measuring success in minutes saved and fuel conserved. But lately, he had noticed something deeper at work: how small routing decisions created ripple effects that transformed entire delivery patterns. It began when he adjusted a single driver's morning route by 3 blocks to avoid a newly installed traffic light. The change seemed insignificant, yet over the following weeks, that minor deviation opened up possibilities he hadn't anticipated. The driver now passed a coffee shop at precisely the right time to avoid its rush-hour crowd. This led to consistently earlier deliveries, which meant happier customers and better reviews. Theodore started paying attention to these subtle choice points. He observed how moving a single stop from the beginning to the end of a route could alter the energy of an entire delivery sequence. Drivers who hit their early morning deliveries with fresh energy tended to maintain better momentum throughout the day. Those who began with challenging stops often carried that friction through their shifts. One rainy Tuesday, Theodore decided to experiment. Instead of optimizing purely for efficiency, He restructured a route to prioritize what he called energy thresholds, points where small choices could leverage bigger shifts. He moved the most positive customer interactions to strategic positions in the sequence, creating pockets of momentum that carried through the challenging sections. The results surprised him. Within 3 weeks, that route's metrics improved across every measure: time, fuel, customer satisfaction. But the most remarkable change was in the driver's experience. "It's like the whole day flows differently," the driver reported. "Those small adjustments you made changed everything." Theodore recognized a profound truth. Micro-choices weren't just about immediate efficiency. They were leverage points that could shift entire trajectories. He began mapping choice thresholds systematically, noting where small decisions created outsized effects. A simple adjustment like scheduling deliveries to align with a driver's natural energy peaks could transform their entire day's performance. He developed a method he called choice stacking, where each small decision was evaluated not just for its immediate impact, but for its potential to create positive momentum. Theodore noticed that when he aligned 3 or more supportive choices in sequence, the results amplified exponentially. The wisdom became clear. Success wasn't built on dramatic changes, but on carefully chosen micro-adjustments that compound over time. Each small choice was like placing a pebble in a stream. Redirect enough pebbles, and eventually the entire flow changes course. The practice: maintain a 7-day choice ledger. Each day, record 3 micro-choices that supported your movement toward the rich timeline. In the evening, review your choices and note 1 corrective tweak that could enhance tomorrow's flow. This practice builds awareness of how small decisions shape larger patterns and helps refine your ability to make choices that compound into desired outcomes. Chapter 14. Contracts of the Old Reality. Clementine Brewster discovered the promise while organizing old papers in her mother's attic. Between faded receipts and postcards, she found a letter written by her grandmother during the Great Depression. In carefully penned words, her grandmother had made a solemn vow: "We will never risk what little we have. Safety first, always." The words struck Clementine like a physical force. For decades, she had maintained meticulous order in the school office, taking pride in her reliability while quietly suppressing any urge toward change. Now she understood why. That ancestral vow had woven itself into the fabric of her family's choices, passed down through subtle gestures and unspoken rules. Each morning, Clementine watched students rush past her desk, their futures bright with possibility. Yet when opportunities for advancement appeared, a position at a private academy, the chance to start her own educational consulting business, she always declined, feeling an inexplicable duty to remain in place. The hidden contract revealed itself in small ways: the emergency fund she never touched, the business courses she never took, the investments she avoided. These weren't just personal choices. They were expressions of a promise made generations ago, binding her to a particular kind of safety. Understanding dawned slowly. Honoring the past didn't require perpetuating its limitations. Her grandmother's vow had served its purpose, protecting the family through desperate times. But carrying it forward unchanged meant denying the very security and abundance it had helped create. One evening, after the school halls had emptied, Clementine created a small ceremony at her desk. She placed her grandmother's letter beside a candle and spoke quietly. "I honor the protection you provided. Your promise kept our family safe. Now, with gratitude, I release this vow to rest in its own time." As she spoke these words, something shifted. The weight of inherited caution lifted slightly, like a knot loosening after years of tension. She didn't dismiss her grandmother's wisdom. Instead, she transformed it, recognizing that true security sometimes requires measured risk. In the following weeks, Clementine noticed subtle changes. When the principal mentioned a new administrative position requiring additional training, she found herself considering it rather than automatically declining. The old pattern of reflexive caution had softened, replaced by thoughtful evaluation. This wasn't about rejecting her family's values, but about allowing them to evolve. Security could mean building resources rather than just preserving them. Protection could include creating opportunities rather than only avoiding dangers. The practice: perform a contract audit ritual. Identify one inherited vow that still influences your choices. Create a quiet space and speak a compassionate renunciation, acknowledging the vow's original purpose while releasing its hold. Complete the process with a symbolic unbinding, perhaps burning a written version of the vow, untying a knot, or opening a window to let fresh air circulate through your space. Chapter 15: The Wealth Identity Ritual. Horace Beaumont stood before his shop mirror, studying his reflection with new eyes. For 15 years, he'd been the reliable neighborhood barber: steady hands, predictable cuts, comfortable small talk. But something within him yearned for more. His barbershop sat at the edge of the city's emerging arts district, yet his clientele remained unchanged, much like the faded posters on his walls. One morning, he noticed how his cautious demeanor and conventional appearance created an invisible barrier. His customers matched his energy, seeking basic trims rather than creative styles. The realization sparked a profound shift. Instead of his usual muted polo shirt, he donned a crisp black button-down. He styled his own hair with subtle flair and replaced the old posters with curated photographs of contemporary cuts. The transformation went deeper than aesthetics. Horace began speaking with quiet confidence about current trends and techniques. He adjusted his posture, stood taller, moved with intention. Each morning, he arrived early to perfect the shop's ambiance, creating an experience rather than just a service. Initially, nothing changed, but Horace maintained his new identity with unwavering consistency. He spoke as though his vision had already manifested, treating each customer interaction as an opportunity to embody his elevated standard. By the second week, he noticed subtle shifts. A local musician requested a bold style. A gallery owner stopped in, curious about the shop's transformed atmosphere. The core principle revealed itself. Identity shapes reality through persistent embodiment. Each morning, Horace refined his self-image through deliberate ritual. He crafted precise language to describe his work, replaced casual habits with intentional practices, and projected his new professional identity through carefully chosen signals, from his attire to his shop's playlist. As Horace sustained this aligned identity, the external world responded. Creative professionals began filling his appointment book. Requests for innovative styles increased. His revenue shifted from basic cuts to premium services. The neighborhood magazine featured his shop in their style section. More significantly, Horace noticed how his transformed identity affected his decision-making. When a high-end salon supply company approached him about stocking their products, he negotiated with natural confidence. The old Horace would have doubted his readiness for such a partnership. The practice that emerged from Horace's experience became a powerful template. Compose a detailed self-descriptor paragraph that captures your desired identity. Speak this truth aloud each morning, letting the words reshape your self-image. Then, perform one visible action daily that demonstrates this identity to the world. Through this consistent practice, the gap between current and desired reality gradually closes until the new identity becomes your natural state of being. The practice: begin a 7-day identity immersion. Write a 1-paragraph self-descriptor that embodies your aligned identity. Speak these words each morning as you prepare to face the day. Choose and perform one public action daily that demonstrates this identity in tangible ways. Record how the world responds to your sustained embodiment of this new way of being. Chapter 16. Aligning Body and Bank Account. Lillian Fairchild noticed the difference on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after she began adjusting her cafe's opening schedule to match her natural rhythms. For years, she had forced herself into a chaotic pattern. Late nights reconciling accounts, pre-dawn rushes to prep the kitchen, and irregular meals squeezed between customer waves. Her body had protested with foggy decisions and scattered focus. The change started small. She established a firm 10 p.m. bedtime, regardless of unfinished tasks. Each morning at 6 a.m., she practiced a simple standing sequence. Feet grounded, spine lengthened, shoulders relaxed. The pose became her anchor, a physical reset before engaging with the day's demands. Within days, her mental clarity sharpened. While holding her morning posture, an idea surfaced about restructuring the cafe's catering service. Instead of competing with larger operations, she envisioned intimate corporate breakfast deliveries, small, premium offerings that maximized her kitchen's strengths. The concept emerged not from stressed analysis, but from a body that felt aligned and resourced. Her staff noticed the shift. Where Lillian once rushed through morning meetings, she now moved with measured intention. Her words carried more weight. Her decisions reflected deeper consideration. She instituted brief pauses throughout the day, 2 minutes of conscious breathing between tasks, a proper lunch break with straight posture and mindful eating. The financial impact revealed itself subtly at first. Better rested and physically centered, Lillian spotted inefficiencies she'd previously missed. Her new catering direction attracted premium clients who appreciated her focused attention to detail. The cafe's energy transformed as her own bodily rhythms stabilized. One morning, while maintaining her usual grounded stance, Lillian recognized how her former physical patterns had mirrored her business limitations. Hunched shoulders over late-night paperwork had reflected scarcity thinking. Rushed movements had manifested as missed opportunities. Now, her aligned posture and regulated sleep opened channels for abundance to flow naturally. The cafe's transformation accelerated when Lillian introduced similar principles to her team. Brief standing meetings replaced rushed huddles. Scheduled breaks became non-negotiable. The staff's enhanced presence translated directly to customer satisfaction and increased tips. The most profound realization came during her midday grounding practice. 3 deep breaths, feet planted firmly, shoulders relaxed. In that moment of physical coherence, Lillian understood that her body's signals had always pointed toward prosperity. She had simply been too scattered to listen. The practice: commit to a daily 3-point bodily alignment practice for 2 weeks. Maintain a consistent sleep window, adhering to the same bedtime and wake time. Begin each morning with a 5-minute posture ritual, standing tall, breathing deeply, allowing your body to find its natural alignment. Perform a brief midday grounding, taking 3 conscious breaths while maintaining proper posture. Track these practices and note how your clarity and decision-making evolve. Chapter 17. Practical Magic. Franklin Merriweather stood in his garage workshop at dawn, surrounded by well-worn tools and stacks of repair invoices. For 15 years, he had built his handyman business through word of mouth and reliable service, but something felt stuck. The work came steadily enough, yet prosperity remained just out of reach. One morning, before checking his phone for service calls, Franklin tried something different. He closed his eyes, held his favorite wrench, and spent 3 minutes visualizing satisfied customers handing him payment with smiles. Then, without delay, he picked up his phone and methodically followed up on 3 overdue invoices. By sunset, 2 of the payments had cleared. More surprisingly, one client offered him a larger renovation project, The connection between his morning visualization and the practical follow-up felt significant, like two gears finally meshing. Franklin developed a system. Each morning, he would sit at his workbench, light a candle, and picture his business thriving for exactly 5 minutes. Then he would immediately perform one concrete business action, sending an invoice, calling a prospect, or organizing his schedule. He tracked these paired actions in a simple notebook, noting both the visualization and its practical counterpart. The results accumulated steadily. A visualization of efficient workflow followed by reorganizing his tool van led to faster job completion. Imagining referral conversations before making follow-up calls brought new clients. Each pairing of mystic and mundane strengthened his business's foundation. One Thursday, while repairing a kitchen sink, Franklin realized he had doubled his monthly income. The increase hadn't come from magical thinking alone. Every vision had been anchored by deliberate action. When he imagined abundant payment while sending professional invoices, customers responded promptly. When he visualized smooth scheduling while updating his calendar, his days flowed more efficiently. The most powerful moment came when Franklin noticed how this paired approach affected his presence on jobs. The morning ritual of visualization combined with practical preparation meant he arrived at each home centered and capable. Clients sensed this shift, increasingly trusting him with larger projects and referrals. The practice began a paired action exercise to be maintained for 1 month. Each day, perform one focused imaginal ritual, such as visualizing successful outcomes or feeling the emotion of achievement, for 5 minutes. Immediately, follow this with one concrete practical step: sending invoices, making business calls, organizing workspace. Record both actions and their outcomes in a daily log, noting any patterns or results that emerge. This practice bridges the gap between vision and manifestation, ensuring that inspiration finds expression in tangible reality. Chapter 18, Community as a Timeline Accelerator. Esther Caldwell traced her finger along the spines of ancient books in the quiet hours before the library opened. After 20 years of curating knowledge, she understood that wisdom, like wealth, flourished through circulation. Yet something deeper stirred in her mind, a recognition that books alone couldn't catalyze the changes she sensed possible. One Wednesday evening, she invited 3 regular patrons to stay after hours: a retired professor, a young entrepreneur, and a high school teacher. They gathered around an oak table, sharing insights from their latest readings. As they spoke, Esther noticed how each person's knowledge filled gaps in the other's understanding. The entrepreneur's practical experience illuminated the professor's theories, while the teacher's daily observations grounded their abstract discussions. This simple meeting sparked an idea. Esther began hosting weekly knowledge exchanges, carefully selecting participants who could both give and receive wisdom. She established clear guidelines. Each person must share something valuable while remaining open to receiving. Conversations would focus on growth and possibility, and all exchanges would honor confidentiality. The effects rippled outward quickly. The entrepreneur connected the teacher with a funding opportunity for classroom projects. The professor introduced several colleagues who brought new perspectives and resources. Soon, Esther's small circle became a hub of opportunity and collaboration. Yet she noticed something crucial. The group's power lay not in networking, but in the sacred nature of their exchange. Each person came prepared to contribute their best insights while maintaining healthy boundaries. When someone attempted to dominate discussions or take without giving, Esther gracefully redirected them, preserving the circle's delicate balance. One evening, as summer light filtered through tall windows, Esther observed how the knowledge exchange had transformed. Beyond mere information sharing, it had become an incubator for aligned action. Members naturally formed partnerships, launched projects, and supported each other's growth. A local writing workshop emerged, then a community investment club, each initiative building upon the foundation of mutual respect and contribution. Most significantly, Esther noticed how her own opportunities multiplied. The library received unexpected grants, speaking invitations arrived, and her influence grew naturally through the web of relationships she'd cultivated. She hadn't sought these outcomes directly. They emerged from creating space for genuine exchange. The practice: create a 30-day outreach plan to connect with 3 specific individuals: a mentor who can guide your growth, a peer who can share reciprocal support, and someone you can genuinely help. For each relationship, prepare one meaningful contribution, whether knowledge, skill, or resource, to offer freely. Document each interaction and its ripple effects, noting how aligned exchanges create momentum for all involved. Chapter 19: Negotiating with Fate. Montgomery Hale stood before the City Planning Board's rejection letter, his 3rd failed proposal in 2 years. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. Every time he designed an innovative community space, bureaucratic barriers emerged. As he stared at the letter, a curious thought surfaced. What if these weren't random setbacks, but messages encoded in his life's contract? Years of studying urban flow had taught Montgomery to read patterns. Just as cities developed according to unwritten rules, he began to see his professional struggles as clauses in an agreement he'd never consciously signed. Each rejection forced him to refine his approach, deepen his research, and build stronger community relationships. One evening, while reviewing his latest proposal, Montgomery decided to treat these recurring obstacles differently. Instead of fighting against them, he sat quietly with a notebook and wrote, "I acknowledge the lessons in patience and precision these delays have taught me. I see now how each setback helped me create more inclusive designs. Having learned these lessons, I respectfully request an amendment to allow smoother passage for projects that serve the greater good." He created a small ritual space in his home office, lighting a candle and speaking his amendment aloud. Rather than demanding immediate success, he expressed gratitude for the growth these challenges had sparked while firmly stating his readiness for a new chapter. The next week, Montgomery noticed subtle shifts. A board member who had previously opposed his work reached out to discuss potential compromises. Community leaders began offering unexpected support. While not every obstacle vanished, he found himself navigating them with newfound grace and understanding. The most significant change came during a crucial presentation. As objections arose, Montgomery recognized them not as barriers but as invitations to demonstrate his learning. He addressed concerns with genuine appreciation for the oversight process while confidently sharing his refined vision. To his surprise, the board approved his proposal with minimal revisions. This experience revealed something profound. Soul contracts weren't rigid sentences to be endured, but living agreements that could evolve as we grew. By acknowledging the purpose behind his challenges and consciously requesting an update to these terms, Montgomery had opened a dialogue with his own destiny. The practice: set aside an hour for a soul contract rewrite session. Identify one recurring hardship in your life and sit with it in contemplation. Ask yourself, what lesson remains unlearned? What growth has this challenge already inspired? Write a formal amendment acknowledging both the wisdom gained and your readiness for a new arrangement. Speak this amendment aloud with reverence and conviction, knowing that conscious renegotiation honors both your growth and your potential. Chapter 20: Midway Mastery. Pearl Whitman approached her reality shifts with the same methodical rigor she brought to her community research projects. After experiencing several promising timeline jumps, she realized that pure faith wasn't enough. She needed verifiable data to understand what worked and what didn't. In her small home office, surrounded by notebooks and spreadsheets, Pearl developed a systematic approach. She began tracking 3 key metrics: her weekly income fluctuations, the quality of her professional relationships, and her daily habits. Each morning, she would make small, intentional shifts in her behavior while documenting the outcomes with precise detail. For her financial experiment, Pearl noted that every time she practiced her morning prosperity visualization, she received unexpected income within 48 hours. At first, she dismissed these as coincidence, but after charting 30 days of data, the pattern became undeniable. Small amounts, a surprise refund, an unexpected bonus, a forgotten invoice payment, arrived with remarkable consistency. The relational tests proved equally revealing. Pearl began greeting her colleagues differently, incorporating subtle shifts in her posture and tone. She tracked responses meticulously, noting how certain energetic adjustments led to more collaborative projects and supportive interactions. One particular shift, maintaining calm expectancy during team meetings, resulted in 3 new research partnerships within a week. Her habit experiments yielded the most surprising data. Pearl discovered that changing her morning routine by just 15 minutes created ripple effects throughout her day. When she added a brief gratitude practice before checking her emails, her project acceptance rate increased by 30%. During one notable experiment, Pearl decided to test the consistency of her timeline shifts. She would alternate between her old and new behaviors every other day for 2 weeks, carefully documenting the results. The differences were stark. Days aligned with her new timeline produced measurable improvements in productivity, relationship quality, and financial flow. The real breakthrough came when Pearl began cross-referencing her datasets. She noticed that successful jumps always showed evidence across all 3 areas: money, relationships, and habits. This triple confirmation approach became her gold standard for validating genuine timeline shifts. As Pearl refined her testing protocols, she developed an unshakable confidence in the process. This wasn't blind faith or wishful thinking. It was reproducible cause and effect, backed by careful observation and detailed records. Her colleagues noticed the change in her demeanor, remarking that she seemed more grounded yet somehow more optimistic. The practice. Begin a 2-week testing protocol to validate your timeline jumps. Design 3 small experiments. 1. Track daily income sources and any correlation with your inner practices. 2. Document how specific changes in your communication affect your relationships. 3. Monitor how adjustments to one key habit influence your daily outcomes. Record your observations every evening, noting patterns and correlations. Look for triple confirmation across all areas to verify genuine shifts. Part 3. Mastery and Integration, Becoming Wealth's Steward. Chapter 21. The Ethics of Switching Timelines. Rupert Langdon sat in his modest home office, surrounded by case files from his years as a public defender. Each folder represented lives affected by hasty decisions and ethical compromises. Though he had left criminal defense work, these lessons shaped his approach to timeline navigation. One morning, Rupert noticed an obvious shortcut to wealth. He could use his timeline knowledge to predict certain business outcomes. The temptation was strong, but he remembered Marcus, a former client who had taken similar shortcuts through insider trading. Marcus's gains had come at the cost of others' retirement funds, creating a web of harm that extended far beyond his immediate circle. Instead of pursuing the shortcut, Rupert developed a careful framework for ethical timeline navigation. He began by asking 3 questions before each jump. Would this shift require deception? Could it harm others' free will? Would the gains come at someone else's expense? In his legal practice, he had seen how seemingly isolated choices created ripple effects through families and communities. This understanding led him to create impact assessments for his timeline work. Before any significant shift, he would map out potential consequences across at least 3 degrees of separation. During a particularly challenging period, Rupert faced intense pressure to use his timeline knowledge to secure a lucrative consulting contract. The opportunity promised immediate financial relief, but required withholding crucial information from potential clients. Despite his mounting bills, he chose transparency, declining the opportunity. 3 weeks later, a former colleague approached him with a different consulting offer, one that aligned perfectly with his ethical framework. This opportunity allowed him to create value for others while prospering himself, requiring no compromises or hidden costs. Rupert began documenting his ethical decisions in a leather-bound journal, noting how respectful timeline navigation often led to more sustainable outcomes. He observed that shifts made with full regard for others' autonomy tended to stabilize faster and produce fewer unintended consequences. He developed a simple but powerful stewardship principle: treat timeline navigation as a resource to be protected and cultivated, not exploited. This meant sometimes accepting slower progress in exchange for cleaner, more ethical shifts. As his practice deepened, Rupert noticed that ethical discernment actually enhanced his ability to detect genuine opportunities. By eliminating exploitative options, he became more attuned to shifts that served both individual and collective good. The practice: create your ethical pledge. Write down 3 unbreakable commitments about how you will navigate timelines. Examples might include: I will never use timeline knowledge to manipulate others' decisions. I will always consider the impact on my community. Or I will maintain transparency in all my dealings. Speak this pledge aloud before attempting any significant timeline shift, using it as a compass for ethical navigation. Chapter 22: Wealth as an Inner State, Not a Number. Mabel Thornton moved through her garden with deliberate steps, pausing to observe each bloom with the same attention she once gave to her students. After 30 years as a school principal, she had learned that true success rarely aligned with conventional metrics. One autumn morning, while reviewing her monthly statements, Mabel noticed her investment returns had dipped. In the past, such fluctuations would have triggered anxiety. Instead, she turned to her leather-bound journal and wrote, "Today's wealth, 20 minutes of undisturbed morning meditation, a meaningful conversation with Sarah about her college plans, 3 hours in the garden without rushing." She developed a simple system of internal measures. Each evening, she rated her day not by dollars, but by presence, agency, and contribution. Some days scored high in presence but low in contribution. Others showed strong agency but revealed gaps in mindful presence. These measurements became her true north, more reliable than market trends or account balances. The practice transformed her relationship with traditional wealth markers. When a financial advisor suggested an aggressive investment strategy that would require constant monitoring, Mabel declined. The proposal would have diminished her presence score, the quality of attention she could give to each moment and person in her life. During a community education meeting, another retired educator remarked on Mabel's evident contentment. "You seem so at peace with retirement," he said. Mabel shared her alternative wealth metrics, explaining how she tracked her capacity to be fully present, make sovereign choices, and contribute meaningfully to others. Within months, Mabel noticed an interesting correlation. As she prioritized these internal measures, external circumstances began to align. A former student invited her to lead well-compensated workshops on educational leadership. A local foundation requested her mentorship for new principals, offering both purpose and prosperity. These opportunities emerged not from desperate seeking, but from the magnetic effect of her internal alignment. One rainy Thursday, while her investment portfolio showed another decline, Mabel reviewed her inner wealth scores. Presence, 8 out of 10. She had maintained mindful awareness through most interactions. Agency, 9 out of 10. She had made clear, unrushed choices aligned with her values. Contribution, 7 out of 10. She had supported 2 new principles through challenging decisions. These measurements revealed a different kind of abundance, one that remained stable regardless of market conditions. When she later received an unexpected consulting offer, it arrived as a natural extension of her inner wealth rather than a desperate need to chase external validation. The practice: maintain a daily inner wealth inventory for 1 week. Each evening, rate 3 core measures on a scale of 1 to 10: presence, quality of attention and awareness; freedom, sense of agency and choice; and contribution, value offered to others. For any score below 7, write 1 specific action you'll take tomorrow to strengthen that aspect. Track how these internal measures correlate with external circumstances over time. Chapter 23. Advanced Jumping. Otis Caldwell sat in his minimalist home office, surrounded by whiteboards covered in intricate diagrams. As the founder of a small software company, he had learned that successful transitions required precise orchestration. His latest insight came after attempting to simultaneously overhaul his product line, restructure his team, and renovate his home, a move that initially created chaos. Through trial and error, Otis discovered the art of staggered transformation. He began by making a subtle shift in his product strategy, introducing a small feature that aligned with his vision of where the company could go. Only after this change settled did he approach his team about reorganizing their workflow. The sequential approach allowed each modification to find its rhythm before introducing the next. At home, Otis applied the same principle. Rather than gutting his entire living space at once, he began with his office, creating an environment that supported his evolved business identity. The measured pace prevented the overwhelm that had previously derailed his efforts. His breakthrough came when he noticed how changes in one area created natural openings in others. After successfully launching a streamlined version of his software, team members organically suggested workflow improvements that matched his hidden intentions. The renovation of his home office inspired similar updates throughout his living space, each shift building upon the last. One morning, while reviewing his carefully plotted timeline, Otis noticed something remarkable. The small, coordinated changes had compound effects. His product's improved user experience led to increased revenue, which funded the team restructuring. The enhanced team dynamics created space for innovation, feeding back into product development. His renovated home environment supported clearer thinking, which benefited every aspect of his business. But the most valuable lesson emerged from the conflicts. When a product update clashed with his team's capacity, Otis learned to adjust the sequence rather than force the timing. He developed a recovery protocol: pause, assess the interference, adjust the sequence, and resume with smaller steps. Otis maintained a detailed journal of these orchestrated shifts. Each entry mapped the interplay between different areas of change, noting both harmonies and tensions. This documentation became his choreography guide, revealing patterns of which moves naturally flowed together and which required careful spacing. The practice: create a 30-day staggered shift plan. Select 2 distinct life threads you wish to transform. Schedule specific micro-jumps for each thread, ensuring they don't compete for resources or attention. Keep a daily journal noting where the changes support or conflict with each other. Document both the practical outcomes and subtle harmonies that emerge from this choreographed approach. Chapter 24. The Art of Quiet Accumulation. Violet Merrick understood the power of silence. In her small publishing house, she noticed how the quietest books often became steady sellers, while flashy launches frequently fizzled. This observation shaped her approach to building wealth, not through grand gestures, but through patient, methodical reinvestment. Each month, when modest royalty checks arrived from her backlist titles, Violet resisted the urge to celebrate publicly. Instead, she quietly allocated portions to expand her operation. A new editing software here, an upgraded marketing tool there. She maintained her small office space rather than moving to trendy downtown locations, knowing that appearance often drained resources needed for genuine growth. Her discipline extended to social media, where industry peers constantly broadcast their successes. Violet posted only about her authors' works, never her company's expanding revenue. This energetic discretion preserved her momentum, preventing the subtle losses that come from premature celebration. The wisdom of her approach revealed itself when an opportunity arose to publish an ambitious historical anthology. While competitors scrambled for external funding, Violet had quietly accumulated enough through her systematic reinvestment of small wins. The project succeeded without fanfare, adding another steady revenue stream to her growing portfolio. Her method proved particularly powerful during industry downturns. When other publishers struggled with overextended budgets and public commitments, Violet's conservative profile and robust reserves allowed her to maintain stability. She had learned that wealth, like a healthy root system, grows best in darkness. One morning, reviewing her quarterly figures, Violet noticed an interesting pattern. The projects she had funded through quiet accumulation consistently outperformed those launched with publicity. It confirmed her intuition. Money, like certain plants, thrives best when allowed to establish roots before facing intense scrutiny. The practice began a 90-day quiet accumulation log. Each week, record your reinvestments, no matter how small, while maintaining complete public silence about your financial activities. Resist sharing progress updates or discussing your accumulation strategy with anyone outside your immediate circle of influence. Monitor how this energetic containment affects your wealth's growth pattern. Chapter 25. Maintaining Flow During External Change. Jasper Ellery had built his vegetable stall over 15 years, carefully cultivating relationships with local farmers and maintaining precise routines that kept his produce fresh and his customers loyal. When city officials announced new regulations requiring all market vendors to upgrade their facilities within 30 days, many of his fellow merchants panicked, but Jasper noticed something peculiar about his response. Instead of joining the chorus of complaints, he found himself drawn to adjust his morning ritual. Each day before sunrise, he began spending 10 minutes in his garden, observing how plants adapted to changing conditions. This quiet observation became his anchor as he methodically revised his stall's layout to meet new requirements. While others rushed to make expensive changes, Jasper implemented small, strategic shifts. He modified his produce rotation schedule, adjusted his display heights, and reorganized his storage system. Each modification aligned with both the new regulations and his inner sense of order. The true test came during inspection week. As health officials moved through the market, several stalls received citations. But when they reached Jasper's space, they found each requirement not just met, but integrated seamlessly into his operation. His success stemmed not from dramatic overhaul, but from sustained, mindful adaptation. What Jasper discovered through this challenge became a template for navigating change. Rather than fighting external shifts, he learned to create internal stability through simple, repeatable actions. His morning garden meditation, midday inventory check, and evening planning session formed a protective triangle around his business consciousness. The second challenge arrived when a major road construction project blocked his regular delivery route. Instead of scrambling for alternatives, Jasper consulted his inner compass. He remembered how water always finds its way around obstacles, and he adjusted his schedule to arrive 30 minutes earlier, using less traveled streets. This single habit adjustment preserved his supply chain, while others struggled with late deliveries and spoiled inventory. Through both disruptions, Jasper maintained his business flow not by forcing external circumstances to conform to his will, but by cultivating internal stability that could weather any storm. His experience demonstrated how personal rituals, when properly anchored, create a resilient foundation that supports adaptation without losing center. The practice, design, and implement a 3-tier contingency ritual for 1 full month. Begin each morning with an anchor practice that grounds your energy and intention. At midday, perform a recalibration exercise to assess and adjust your alignment with changing conditions. End each day with a release ritual that helps you process changes and prepare for tomorrow. Record how this structured approach affects your ability to maintain stability through unexpected shifts. Chapter 26. Wealth Preservation. Adelaide Mercer sat at her kitchen table one morning reviewing her quarterly accounts. As a home-based accountant serving local businesses, she prided herself on attention to detail. But that morning, something caught her eye, a pattern of small expenses that individually seemed insignificant but collectively represented a concerning drain on her resources. She noticed how her printer ink costs had gradually increased over 6 months, not from more printing but from rushing to buy cartridges at premium prices when she ran out. This observation sparked a deeper investigation into other subtle leaks in her business. Adelaide began implementing what she called invisible guardrails, small, preventive measures that protected her resources. She created a supply inventory system, checking levels every Friday morning before placing orders at optimal prices. She established strict boundaries around her working hours, noting how after-hours client calls often led to unpaid consultation time. The most revealing insight came through her energy audit ritual. Each month, she tracked not just financial outlays but energy expenditure, noting which clients and activities enriched her practice and which subtly depleted it. She discovered that rushing between client calls without a buffer left her mentally exhausted, reducing her effectiveness in afternoon sessions. In response, she instituted a 15-minute sanctuary period between appointments. This small adjustment preserved her mental clarity and improved her service quality. The change felt almost imperceptible, yet its impact on her business vitality proved substantial. One morning, Adelaide noticed a recurring payment for an unused software subscription, a tiny monthly sum she had overlooked for nearly a year. Rather than simply canceling it, she redirected that amount to a quiet giving fund, transforming a leak into a channel for purposeful generosity. This practice of converting discovered inefficiencies into intentional contributions became part of her preservation protocol. She maintained a simple notebook where she tracked these subtle adjustments. Each entry reflected not just financial metrics, but energetic ones. Client interactions that needed firmer boundaries, tasks that required better timing, resources that needed more mindful allocation. Through this careful attention to minor details, Adelaide found herself operating from a place of greater stability and abundance. The practice: implement a monthly preservation audit. Dedicate 1 hour to review your spending patterns, energy expenditures, and relational obligations. Identify one small leak in your resources and implement a specific correction. Document both the leak and your solution, then monitor its impact over the following 30 days. Chapter 27. Teaching the Grid. Chester Mallory stood at the edge of the basketball court, watching his students practice their free throws. After 15 years of coaching middle school sports, he had developed a keen eye for potential. But it wasn't until Marcus Thompson showed up early one morning, asking for additional guidance, that Chester truly understood the delicate art of teaching. Marcus demonstrated unusual dedication for a 13-year-old, arriving before sunrise 3 times a week. Chester recognized something familiar in the boy's determination, the same drive that had once fueled his own athletic journey. Yet this recognition came with an important realization. The responsibility of transmission required careful boundaries. Chester established clear parameters for their additional training sessions. He drafted a simple agreement that outlined expectations. Marcus would maintain his grades, respect regular practice hours, and complete specific foundational exercises before advancing to more complex techniques. This wasn't mere formality. It was a protective structure that honored both teacher and student. The initial test Chester assigned was modest: 30 free throws every morning for 2 weeks, recording not just successes but the quality of each attempt. This simple task revealed Marcus's commitment while teaching him the value of patient observation. More importantly, it showed Chester whether the boy could handle instruction without becoming dependent on constant guidance. As their work progressed, Chester noticed something unexpected. Each time he broke down a technique to teach Marcus, his own understanding deepened. Explaining the subtle weight shift in a jump shot forced him to examine movements he'd long taken for granted. Teaching became a mirror, reflecting back deeper insights into his own mastery. One morning, as Marcus perfected a defensive stance Chester had demonstrated, the coach realized he'd unconsciously refined his own form through the process of instruction. The act of teaching, when properly contained, didn't diminish his knowledge. It distilled it to its essence. Chester maintained clear boundaries throughout their training. Some advanced techniques remained unshared, preserved for when Marcus showed greater readiness. This wasn't hoarding knowledge, but honoring the natural progression of learning. Through this measured approach, both mentor and student grew stronger. The practice of teaching with clear limits transformed Chester's entire coaching philosophy. He developed a systematic approach for each student who sought extra guidance, requiring them to demonstrate readiness through small, specific tasks before advancing. This structure protected his energy while ensuring students truly earned each piece of knowledge they received. The practice: draft a 1-page teaching covenant for any student you accept, specifying limits, responsibilities, and a small initiation task. Include clear boundaries around time, energy, and knowledge transmission, ensuring both teacher and student understand their obligations and limitations. Chapter 28. From Personal Wealth to Collective Shift. Lottie Brandt noticed the broken lawnmower sitting idle in her neighbor's yard. As a community organizer in the Riverside district, she had witnessed how individual scarcity often masked collective abundance. That broken lawnmower sparked an idea that would transform her neighborhood's relationship with resources. Starting small, Lottie created a simple spreadsheet listing tools and equipment gathering dust in garages across 3 blocks. She approached each neighbor with respect, explaining her vision of a shared resource pool that could multiply everyone's capabilities. To her surprise, most readily agreed to participate. The system began modestly, a shared WhatsApp group where neighbors could post what they needed or offer what they had. A retired mechanic fixed the broken lawnmower, which then served 5 families. A pressure washer rotated between homes each weekend. A rarely used food processor found new life in multiple kitchens. But Lottie's true insight came from implementing clear structures. She established simple protocols. Items had to be returned clean and on time. Any damage would be collectively addressed, and regular maintenance costs were shared transparently. These boundaries created trust and prevented the typical pitfalls of shared resources. When envy or tension arose, like when 2 families wanted the pressure washer on the same weekend, Lottie's system provided clear solutions through a simple scheduling rotation. She noticed that transparency around usage and costs naturally discouraged overuse while promoting fair access. Within 3 months, the initial tool share experiment had expanded to include kitchen appliances, garden equipment, and even specialized tools for home repair. Neighbors who previously struggled to afford basic maintenance could now tackle projects themselves. A single, well-maintained pressure washer served 12 households effectively, reducing individual expenses while building community bonds. The most remarkable transformation wasn't in the tools themselves, but in how neighbors began to think differently about resources. They started identifying other opportunities for sharing. Carpools naturally emerged, bulk food purchases became common, and skills were exchanged more freely. The scarcity mindset that had gripped the neighborhood began to dissolve. One afternoon, watching Mrs. Chen use the shared lawnmower while Mr. Rodriguez waited to borrow it for edging, Lottie realized she had created more than a practical system. She had seeded a new form of local prosperity. The Tool Share project had become a tangible demonstration of abundance through cooperation. The practice: design a micro-collective project, identify 3 participants, propose one shared resource, and run a 1-month trial with transparent accounting. Document usage patterns, maintenance needs, and any challenges that arise. Create clear guidelines for access and responsibility, ensuring every participant understands both benefits and obligations. Chapter 29. The Return Ritual. Rufus Penhall stood at the corner of Maple and 3rd, where his electrical business had started 5 years ago. After a remarkably successful year that had brought contracts with major developers, he felt a growing distance between himself and the neighborhood that had supported his early struggles. The weight of this separation sat heavy in his chest. One morning, he noticed old Mrs. Henderson struggling with her porch light, just as she had when he first started out. Without announcement or fanfare, he parked his new truck around the corner and walked over with his tools. "Let me help you with that, just like old times," he said, refusing payment just as he had years ago. This small act awakened something in him. Over the next few weeks, Rufus began arriving early to the neighborhood, quietly repairing outdoor fixtures and safety lights for elderly residents who had supported him in leaner times. He left no business cards, sought no recognition. The simple act of working with his hands in service of others grounded him in ways his recent success had not. During one such morning, while fixing the community center's flickering hallway lights, he overheard 2 old-timers reminiscing about how the neighborhood had changed. "Remember when young Rufus used to practice his wiring in the basement here," one said. "Now he's got those big contracts uptown." The words struck him, not with pride but with a reminder of the community that had believed in him before anyone else did. That evening, Rufus made a decision. He set aside his designer work clothes and returned to wearing his original work boots and plain uniform. He began attending the monthly neighborhood council meetings again, sitting quietly in the back rather than showcasing his expertise. When asked about his company's growth, he redirected conversations to praise the local businesses that had given him his first chances. The true turning point came when he discovered his old practice panel in the community center basement. Rather than removing this reminder of his humble beginnings, he restored it, creating a small training station for young apprentices from the neighborhood. Every Saturday morning, he taught basic electrical skills to anyone willing to learn, sharing not just technique but the values of service and community that had shaped his success. These acts of reintegration weren't grand gestures, but small, consistent choices that dissolved the invisible barriers success had built. Through them, Rufus found that true prosperity wasn't measured in contracts or accounts, but in the ability to remain genuinely connected to the soil from which one grew. The practice to compose and perform a humble return, one public act of service, one personal renunciation of excess, and one recorded gratitude to those who remained. Chapter 30. Living as an Agent of Timelines. Marjorie Hale walked her familiar route through Cedar Heights, carrying a small leather notebook that held 30 years of neighborhood wisdom. Her trained nurse's eye noticed the subtle shifts: a wilting garden here, fresh paint there, the changing rhythms of front porch conversations. Each observation earned a careful note in her ledger, part of a practice refined since retiring from the city hospital. This morning, she paused at Sarah Chen's house, noting the drawn curtains that had remained closed for 3 weeks. Instead of rushing to intervene, Marjorie simply took her usual bench across the street, sipping tea from her thermos. When Sarah finally emerged to collect her mail, Marjorie offered a gentle nod, an acknowledgement without intrusion. "The kettle's always on," Marjorie said softly, a phrase that had become known throughout the neighborhood as an invitation without pressure. 3 days later, Sarah appeared at her door, and Marjorie's kitchen became a space for quiet healing. Marjorie's guidance came not through loud pronouncements, but through careful calibration. When Sarah spoke of feeling stuck, Marjorie shared a simple morning ritual, opening the curtains while speaking 3 intentions for the day. The suggestion seemed small, but Marjorie knew from experience that such micro-adjustments often served as doorways to larger shifts. Her notebook contained countless similar interventions: Mrs. Rodriguez's transformation after learning to tend herbs, Mr. Patterson's recovery through daily walks to the corner store, young Tommy finding his way through afternoon chess matches with local elders. Each entry reflected not just outcomes, but the delicate process of knowing when to step forward and when to step back. One afternoon, Marjorie noticed new resident James Wilson struggling with moving boxes. Instead of immediately offering help, she waited until he took a break, then mentioned casually that Tuesday evenings the neighborhood shared resources and skills. A month later, James had become an active participant in the community's informal tool-sharing network. Her most powerful work happened in these spaces between not fixing problems, but creating conditions where solutions could emerge naturally. She held regular garden hours where neighbors could find her tending her flowers, making herself available without demanding attention. These quiet moments often yielded the most profound shifts, as people found their own way to change while feeling safely witnessed. Each evening, Marjorie performed her stewardship accounting, noting interventions made, resources shared, and subtle shifts observed. This wasn't mere record-keeping, but a sacred practice of maintaining balance in the neighborhood's delicate ecosystem of need and abundance. Practice. Establish a daily stewardship liturgy, brief morning intention, midday check, evening accounting, to hold your role over time. Conclusion. Marjorie's final gift to her neighborhood emerged through an unassuming brown leather journal, discovered one morning on the community center's steps. Inside, she had meticulously documented the sacred liturgy that had guided her work for 3 decades, a practical framework that united the technical and spiritual aspects of timeline stewardship. The journal opened with her daily diagnostic routine, a morning practice of scanning the neighborhood's energetic field while walking her rounds, noting subtle disturbances in the grid through changes in atmosphere, recurring patterns, or shifts in community dynamics. She recorded how to distinguish between surface turbulence and deeper timeline disruptions, teaching others to read these signs without becoming overwhelmed by them. Her preservation methods focused on maintaining equilibrium through small, consistent actions rather than dramatic interventions. She detailed how to establish quiet checkpoints throughout the day, moments of conscious pause to assess energy levels, review recent decisions, and make micro-adjustments before imbalances could take root. The heart of her system lay in what she called community craftsmanship, the delicate art of weaving individual transformations into the broader social fabric. Her notes revealed how she would identify natural nodes of connection, nurture informal support networks, and create spaces where neighbors could discover their own capacity for mutual aid. Most striking was her ethical framework, carefully developed to ensure that timeline work served the greater good. She outlined clear principles for intervention: respect for individual agency, protection of community bonds, and the importance of allowing natural consequences to unfold. Her guidelines emphasized the difference between manipulation and mindful influence, showing how to foster change while honoring the sovereignty of all involved. The journal contained practical templates for daily stewardship, morning intention-setting rituals that aligned personal purpose with community needs, midday check-ins to assess the flow of resources and energy, and evening protocols for reviewing interventions and their ripple effects. These weren't mere routines, but a sophisticated system for maintaining balance while facilitating growth. Marjorie's final entry spoke to the deeper purpose of timeline work, not merely as a means of personal advancement, but as a sacred trust. She described how true mastery meant becoming invisible, allowing the grid itself to work through one's actions rather than imposing one's will upon it. Her words revealed timeline shifting as a form of service, where personal prosperity became a tool for nurturing collective flourishing.
If you enjoyed this exclusive audiobook, I handpicked this next book which will change your life.